Well, hello Internet, and welcome to part 9 of my Arduino and electronics tutorial series. One of you guys asked me if I could create the Pong game on an LCD panel like I used in part 8 of this tutorial series, and I said sure. And what I'm going to do in this tutorial is I'm going to start part 1 of a tutorial series on creating a Pong game on an LCD panel, and I'm going to live code it, which means I'm writing all the code out of my head without any preparation, which is awesome. All of the code that I use in this tutorial is going to be available in the description underneath this video. And now what I'm going to do is jump into the future and show you what you will have by the end of this video. Okay, so I have the exact same setup for making the LCD panels work, except I have added 2 switches to the bottom, and you can see exactly how those are set up, and those are put in pin 7 and 8, and whenever you click on it, you're going to be able to move your paddle to the right, and it's not going to go off the board, and then you can also go to the left. And now I'm going to show you the schematic. Okay, so you saw the setup for putting this Pong game together, and here is how we're going to wire everything. The only difference is, if you want to rewind it, I added some switches to the 8 and the 7 pin on the Arduino, and that is all that's different about this. And basically, as a review now, I'm just going to show exactly what you need to do whenever you are going to try to print a character on an LCD panel. Okay, so basically the way it is each of the parts of the LCD panel that we are going to be able to print characters on are going to be 5 individual dots wide and 8 deep, and then what we're going to be able to do is based off of the binary values. It will either be 0 would be off and 1 would be on, obviously. We're going to be able to use a library in our code to pass in a value. So for example, as you see on the right side of the screen, if we pass in that row for our character is going to be equal to 10, it would put a light in the second as well as the fourth, and you can see how that lines up as we change binary values over into base 10 values. And now what I'm going to do is jump in and start writing the code to make this guy work. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to be writing this out of my head, so I think that would be the best way to learn. And I think this is one of the best ways to learn how to program, because you are going to have constraints like hardware that you have to work around. So let's come in here, and I'm going to import a library. It's going to make it a little bit easier for me to work with my LCD panel. And all you do is pass in the information in regards to the pins that are going to be connected to our LCD panel. And pretty much every time you do this, it's going to be done exactly the same way. And I'm going to come in here, I'll just call this .9, that's perfectly fine, and save, and there we go. So we have that set up, and now I got to think about what I'm going to need to do. Well, one thing I want to do is I want to be able to hold my paddle data in 2 separate arrays so that it'll be easy for me to print the different characters. So one of the characters at the top is going to print, as the panel is lit up, it's going to print in the top character, and then as the paddle moves down, we're going to move it into the character below it. So I'm going to create a byte, and I'm going to think ahead of time and do, even though the AI paddle isn't going to work right now, I know I'm going to have it, and I'm going to use similar logic for it, so I'm going to have that all set up. And on top of that, I am going to set it up so that I just have values put in there ahead of time so that it speeds up my codes just slightly. And I know that I want to have 3, so the paddle's going to take up 3 spaces, as you saw in the code that as I showed you in the working prototype at the beginning of this tutorial. And I'm going to call this my paddle array, and this is going to represent the 2 characters, and then this is going to represent the 8 digits for each of those different characters. So, like I said previously, each one of these values is going to represent whether lights are on or not. So for each row of those characters, remember I said there are 8 of them, there's going to be an associated value. So for example, if the second one in there is 10, then it's going to light those 2 things up. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. All right, so 2 characters and 8 each to make up each of the characters. All right, so I have that all set up. And what else am I going to need? Well, I'm just going to go ahead and do the things that I know I'm going to need to do. So I need to make the buttons work. So I'm going to call this move right button. And I know that this is going to be associated with the 8th pin, and then I'm also going to be able to move the paddle, from the left to the right. So let's come in here like this, and I just change this to left. And then let's have this be set up for pin 7. I'm also going to want to store whether the buttons have been pressed or not. So I only want it to move the paddle if the button one space if the paddle is pressed once, so that if they hold the button down, I don't want it to just fly left and right. I want to have 100% control of it. So I'm going to store the state for it. So I'm going to go right button state, and it's going to start off as 0, meaning that it is not being pressed, or it wasn't pressed previously. And again, I'm going to do this for the left button state as well. And also, I'm going to go and store the previous state. And that, as you're going to see here in the logic, is going to allow me to only receive a value once. So I'm just going to come in here and put last inside of there, and put last inside of there, and get this extra T out of here. All right, so I know I got that logic all set up. Now at this point, I don't know what else I'm going to do, but I just want to get everything out of the way so that I have all of the different parts that I know I'm going to need to make this work. I want to get rid of everything that I know ahead of time so I can focus later on the things that I don't know. So I may want to be able to print into the serial monitor, so I'm going to throw this inside here, and I more than likely will because I'm going to want to do some testing. I also want to come in here and define how my LCD panel is going to be working. So it's 16 total characters and 2 rows. I'm also going to want to set up my buttons so I can receive input. So I'm going to go pin mode, and then it is move right button. So let's just copy this out of here, and let's paste that right there and set this for input. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing for the left button. So let's just come in here and change this to left button. Also, I am going to want to set up my panels whenever this is first starting up. And I know that, so I'm just going to come in here, and even though I have no idea what the function is going to look like, I'm just going to put it inside of there. All right. I can't think of anything else I want to set up. That may change at some point in time, but for right now, I think that I know that's all I want to do. All right, so in the loop, what do I want to do? I'm just going to continue setting up all of my buttons. So my right button state is going to, what I'm going to do is come in and get the current button state to see if the user is currently pressing the button down or if they press the button down. Remember, the loop is just going to loop and run this code over and over and over again. And also, I'm going to get left button state, and then we will check to see if those are being used or not. So this is left button state, and this is left. All right, so we got that. So I'm checking to see if those values have been pressed. What else am I going to do? Well, after I go to see if they're being pressed or not, I want to check if the button state has changed. So the button state starts off at 0, meaning nothing's being pressed. So if it's pressed, that means that the user has pressed it, and I need to react to that. So I'm going to say not equal to right last button state. And if that has changed, then what I want to do is check if the button was pressed. So I'm going to say if right button state is equal to high, which means that yes, indeed, it has been pressed. Well, in that situation, what do I want to do? Well, I want the user to be able to move a paddle, and the right button is going to mean move it up, and I have no idea what this function is going to do, so I'm just going to do that right now. And then, of course, I'm going to need to print any changes that have occurred with my paddles. So I'm just going to say that right there. So you can, whenever you're doing this and you're referencing functions that don't exist, you can go in here and put question marks for the things that you're going to want to come back to and fix, of course. If you try and compile the code, it's going to give you errors either way. Another thing I'm going to need to do, I don't think I need to do anything else except move the paddles and then reprint the paddles. I'm also going to come in here and go delay and 50 milliseconds. What that's going to do is just avoid any bouncing. And bouncing is whenever you press a switch and it sort of temporarily goes connected, disconnected, just because the switch is kind of crappy. So I'm going to do that. And then, of course, after I do all of that, I am then going to store the previous state so that I know whenever I check again to see if the switch has been pressed again. So there we go. All right. And that just makes sure that, it doesn't keep executing multiple times. I'm also going to come in and do the same thing for my left button state. So I'm just going to come in here and change all of these to left. So left and left and left and left. And I know I'm going to have to go and type in an extra T there. Don't need to do anything else with that. Let's go left again and left again. And I think I got everything right and everything is looking good. All right, so there you go. Got the setup and the loop, as far as I know, all set up. And now it's time to figure out what is going to come next. Well, if I'm going to, I know I need to create these two functions right here, and I know that I'm going to need to print the paddles, but I want to just focus in on what is the easiest thing for me to focus in on right now. And the easiest thing is that I know if I'm going to print the paddles, I'm going to have to clear the whole entire row before I print them. And I know that that's also easy code for me to execute. So I'm going to come up here and I am going to do that. I'm going to just break everything down into its easiest parts. And so I'm going to do it. So I'm not going to have this pass in anything. I'm going to go clear paddles and get this easy problem out of the way up front. So I'm going to go int and I is equal to 0, and as long as I is less than 2 and I plus plus, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear these guys right here, these two arrays that we have. All right, and I'm going to have to do pretty much exactly the same thing again. So let's just copy that out of there, paste that in there, and then change this to J, change this to J, and change this to 8, and then this to J, of course. And then all I need to do is go and get this guy right here, and I will paste it inside of there, and I will go I and J and set those values to 0. And there it is. And then I'm going to do the same exact thing for my paddle array. And later on, I might want to change this to two separate things where I clear just the AI or just my stuff. Haven't figured it out. Right now, I'm going to do it this way. All right, so the next easiest thing for us to do is to avoid the logic of moving those things around in the character parts. Something that's pretty easy is printing out the data. So I'm just going to say my print paddles. Yes, print paddles. There's that guy right there. And I'm going to decide how this function works. Well, basically what I want to do is I want to grab all 8 of these characters out of there. Specifically, I'm working with my paddle array. So all 8 of these. That is going to allow me to get all the values I need to make one character. To grab just that, you're going to use a pointer, and I'm going to call this MP temp 1, and then to get the value out of there, I just go my paddle array and just put the 0 part there. And that's going to get me a reference to that guy. And since I have 4 total characters, there's 2 rows and 2 total for each of those. I'm going to come in here and get this, and then I can just change this to 2. So got that there, and this stays the same, except this is going to be the character, the second character in the bunch. And then I'm also going to have the AI one. Again, later on, I might decide to put these in separate different functions, but for right now, I'm just going to keep them exactly where they are and change this to AI and change that to AI. All right, so I got that set up, and oops, I want the second character. All right, so go there, that goes. Then, before I can print any of this information out, I need to use our LCD library we have, and I need to create the character. So LCD, and it is create character, and I have to give it a unique value, so I'm going to put 0 inside of there. And then the array that is going to make up that specific character. This guy right here says 8 values. And again, this is just popping into my head how to solve this. I might be able to streamline this later on. But this is stream of consciousness coding. This is just me solving the problem ahead of me. And then later I can go back and make it look better or fix it. The goal here is to make the code work and worry about making it a little bit more useful later on. Believe me, there's going to be code that I'm going to have to write in here that's going to be very creative in this part of the tutorial. All right, what else do I need to do? Well, I'd like to move the cursor to the 13th column on the first row and then print it. So just go LCD and set cursor like that. And this starts at 0. So it's going to be, if I want to go on the 13th column, I have to put 14 in there. And this is going to be the first row. That's where that is going to be printed. And then after I do that, I can come in and write in the character. And you have to go and convert it to bytes. This, and there that is. All right, so I got that all set up. And then basically what I need to do is just go and do this same thing again for all the other 3 characters. So I'm going to just put some space inside of here. And then just do it for all the other ones. So what changes? Well, the character value is going to change. So, I'm going to have to create the character also. Oh, I already did that. So let's change the next one to 1. So, well, first thing what I want to do is I want to jump to the second row. So I'm going to set my cursor there and change this to 1. And after I have that set up, I am then going to want to jump to the second to print the AI part of the paddle. And that's going to be the second one. And then I'm going to jump to the second row and the second one in. And then this is going to be 3. All right, so I got that all set up. What else do I need to do? Can't really think of anything. So let's just save that. And that is going to print the paddles on my LCD panel. So very useful stuff. Okay, so as I look at this, I see right here, set up paddles, and I realize I have not done that. So let's come in here and let's do it. So I'm going to go void and set paddles. And what do I want to do? Well, first thing I want to do is I want to clear any excess information that's inside of there. And what else do I want to do? I'm going to go my paddle array. And that's what I called it, right? My paddle array. Yes, my paddle array. And then there's the AI paddle array also. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go and copy this just so I don't accidentally type in the wrong words. All right, so let's copy that and let's paste that inside of there. And then just to keep it nice and simple, I'm going to go 0 and 5 is going to be equal to 16. And that means I want to light the leftmost LED or parts of the LCD panel. And I'm going to do that for 3 because each of the paddles, as you saw in the demonstration, are going to be 3 in size. So let's go like this. And then I'm going to go and put 6 and 7. I think that's a good place for them. And then I'm going to do basically exactly the same thing for the AI paddle that's going to print on the screen, except what is going to change? Really not that much anything, except that this is going to be 1 because I want these paddles to be on the right side. 16 is going to put them on the leftmost and 1 is going to put them on the rightmost. So let's just copy that. And then this will be 6 and 7, and they'll line up whenever the game starts. And what else do I want to do? Well, I'm obviously going to have to print the paddles after I set them up onto the screen. All right, so that's all set up. All right, so what's next? Well, as I look down here inside of my code, I see that I don't have move paddle up, and also, let's go and get rid of this. This isn't move paddle up, this is going to be move paddle down. So I have to create move paddle up and down. This is going to be the hardest part of this whole entire thing. So right here, after set up paddles, I'm going to figure out what's going on. All right, so move paddle up, I'm going to do that first. It's not going to return any values. It's just going to work on its own, which is good. And what are we going to do with it? Well, basically, I have 2 characters that I need to move. And what I'm thinking is, I'm trying to think of what problems could there be. Well, one problem is I have them all set up 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. That is the first character. Then, guess what? For the second character, for the rows, and what I'm referring to is this guy. See, there's 2 total characters and 8 numbers altogether to make each of the characters print. Well, for the next one, the index is going to go and do that again. That's kind of problematic because I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to have to do some weird if statements. I'm going to have to do some things because I'm not going to want my value or my paddle to be able to go negative, go off the board across the top or across the bottom. Well, that's going to cause problems because I got a 7 here and another 7 here. So I'm going to have to do if statements in which I say, well, if 7 but not in character 2, and this is starting to become problematic. What I'm thinking, the first thing that's coming to mind as a way of solving this is actually to create a copy of the array, but have it go from 0 to 15 instead of from 0 to 7 and then from 0 to 7 again. That's going to keep me from having to do a whole bunch of if statements. And I think that is the way to go. So what I'm going to do is come up here and I'm going to make a copy. So basically, I think this is actually going to be more useful because there's going to be this is going to dramatically cut down on logic. And I think it's going to make it so I have to use almost no logic to go and move my little arrays around, just by going and having 2 copies of this. This is very convenient if I want to print characters. This is going to be very convenient if I want to move my array within bounds and not have to use all kinds of logic to make sure that I'm in the right place. So this is going to be 16 because there's 16 total character or columns that I'm going to be working with. And this is going to be equal to, and then it's going to be basically the same. So I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to grab this. Just thought of this, my paddle array. This is going to be 16, not 1. So 16. And let's go and copy all of this stuff and paste that in there. And everything else is going to be zeros after this. So I'm just going to have a whole bunch of zeros. So let's just go and copy all of this and put a comma there, throw that inside of there, and then throw another one inside of there, throw that there, that there, and that there. So this is 1, 2, 3, and I just counted these to make sure there were 16. All right, so I got that all set up, and that is looking pretty good. So now I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to change this to my paddle column array, and then I just change those to 16, and everything is looking good there. Another thing comes to mind is I think I'm just going to want to base all of my logic around the middle part of my paddle. So there's going to be a middle dot, and then there's going to be a dot above it and a dot below it. I think that's going to save me from a lot of logic. So let's go paddle position, and it's going to be 6 because that is the middle part. Because if we, well, you can just look at it this way: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that's going to be that guy. So we're going to copy that. And we're going to paste that in there, and we're going to change this to my paddle position. All right, so everything's sort of working its way out here. And let's move on to this guy and see if I can set the logic up to make the move paddle work a little bit better. All right, so the very first thing, I know I don't want the paddle to move off the board. So I'm going to say if my paddle position is not equal to, remember this is going to be moving it up, my paddle position, so I don't need to worry about that whenever I'm working with the down arrow, because, you know, it's going down, not up. So if my paddle position is not equal to 1, and remember that is going to be for the middle part of the paddle, so there's going to be a dot above it and a dot below it, so that's why I'm using 1. So I'm going to say if my paddle position is not equal to 1, I'm going to want to decrement this guy because it's going to be okay for me to move that direction. And then what do I need to do after that? Well, I basically need to cycle through all the booleans, turning on the next one above and off the one below. So let's do that. And we'll go for int I is equal to 0. And while I is less than 16 and I plus plus, and there we go. And then what I'm going to say is if I is equal to my paddle position minus 1, then, or, I'm going to say or I is equal to my paddle position. So that's going to handle both the topmost, or the bottommost, and the middlemost. And I'm going to set all these to true. So I'm going to say I is equal to my paddle position plus 1, which is actually going to be the bottom part of my paddle. All right, so I got all of that. In that situation, I'm going to say that I want to draw the paddle. So I'm going to go my paddle column array I is going to be equal to 16. And if it's anything else, I'm going to zero out the whole entire row. So I'll just go and copy this. And I'll paste this inside of here. My paddle column array, and this is going to be 0. And there that is. And what else am I going to have to do? Well, I'm also going to have to update the arrays that I used for printing out my paddle characters. So, come after this, and I'm going to say for int I, or let's make it j just to make it different, equal to 0, and j less than 8, and j plus plus, And then I'm going to go my paddle array, right? My paddle array. So I have to store this back in here so that everything looks right whenever the characters are set up. Trust me, a lot less logic is going to save a lot of time. All right, so let's paste that in there. My paddle array and 0. And then another one for j is equal to my paddle column array and j, and that will be good. And then I'm also going to do the same exact thing for the other one. So let's go and get this, paste that there, and then this is going to be for the second row. So it's going to be 8 through and less than 16. And let's change this to K and change this to K. And all the code is available in the description, and of course it's free. So, and then I'll go my paddle array, and then this is going to be for the second character, and then I can go K minus 8, and then my paddle column array, and this is going to be K. And there we are. And that is going to handle all the logic for moving the paddle up. But now I'm starting to think about something, because the logic for moving up and down is basically going to be almost exactly the same, which means this is all going to be exactly the same. So what I'm going to do is copy it out, and let's go and do my paddle down just to make sure. Yeah, I'm pretty certain though. All right, so the other one's going to be move paddle down, right? Yes, move paddle down. So let's just go and copy that as well. And jump right back inside of here. And this is going to be void move paddle down. And there we are. And then the logic for this is going to be almost exactly the same. It's going to be 14 though. So let's go copy that, paste that inside of there, and then close this off. And I'm liking this because it's looking very short. So this is going to be my paddle position is not equal to 14. That makes sure it doesn't fall off the bottom part. And my paddle position, instead of negative, this is going to increase it, because as it goes down, it increases. And you know what? Yeah, this is exactly the same. So what I want to do is I want to copy this out of here, just completely remove all of this. So get this stuff and take all of it out. And I think no, I don't want all that. I want all of this. All right, so that's good. Let's copy that out of there. And I think that is going to look good. And then what I want to do is I'm actually going to go and call this update paddles after move. So I can just go void and update paddles after move. And again, no attributes are needed. And all I need to do is paste that inside of there. And I think that's all I need to do. Then what I can do is I can just call this after each of these functions. So move paddle up and move paddle down. After it does this, call that function. Whoops, let's get this, yeah, that's fine. And update paddles after move. And there it is, and there it is. And now I'm gonna compile it, and let's see if I made any errors. Yes, I did. So let's go and figure out what those errors are. And it says line 37, this guy right here. AI ptemp, oh, this is gonna be changed to 2. And I think everything else is fine there. Let's go and compile it again. And oh boy, it looks like it worked. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload it to the Arduino and test it out, see if it works. So I'm uploading it. There it is. And I'm guessing can I go across the top or across the, jump off the thing? No, I can't. It stops when it goes down to the bottom and everything works. And right now I'm looking at what you looked at the beginning of the tutorial, and everything looks like it works beautifully. So thank you guys for watching, and in the next part I'm going to go and set the logic or create the logic for the ball. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and like always, please leave your questions and comments below. Otherwise, till next time.